Well, hello there, everyone. My name is Shawn Dorward. I am the practice manager at Dynamic Consulting. I am super excited to be here today to present to you, the DynamicsCon community, 10 Business Central life hacks that every end user should know. Not the only 10, but just 10. So I want to make sure I give a big shout out and a thank you to everyone who took the time to not only submit sessions, but to take the time to vote on them. Look at this great lineup over these few days. How awesome is this to have a virtual event where we can all get together and learn cool things? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about 10 Business Central life hacks that every end user should know. We'll go through them at a little bit of a slower pace if you've ever been in my sessions before and talk about them a little bit. Don't forget to use the chat over here throughout the session. I'm going to be monitoring this throughout. We can discuss them at the end, and I may even be able to answer some throughout. So be sure to use that. So I mentioned a little bit about myself. We'll talk more about that toward the end. Let's get right in and talk about life hack number 1. So the first one here is managing new features. And I think this one is really important. If everyone is probably aware that Microsoft is constantly improving Business Central. So both in a Wave 1 rollout in the spring and a Wave 2 rollout in the fall, lots of new features and functionality, right? I think you know that. But what's really interesting about this is when Microsoft rolls them out, they don't immediately give you them as a default option. So I'm going to search for feature management. Pop that open. And in here are some of the features that have not been forced into your company or your environment in Business Central. So if you want to take advantage of these, maybe you're just a little apprehensive, you're waiting for some of the bugs to be worked out, and that does happen, and not too often, but it does happen. So in order to get those new features, not all of them, but just certain ones that are like a little bit larger that get inserted into the code base, you have to enable them early. As you can see on my screen here, there are a few in here, and they're going to automatically be enabled when version 19 rolls out, which is at the end of the year. But if I want them a little sooner, I have to come in here and enable them. So I have my screen zoomed in pretty far. Let me zoom out just a little bit so you can see that for this particular company, these are all disabled. Life hack number 2 in this session is going to be part of one of these features. So we need to enable it. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's see, where is it? Maybe it's not. There it is, right there in the middle. That was too easy. Check financial journals and background. So let's just go ahead in here and we're going to enable this for all users. Now it's enabled. We get a notice saying that we have to sign out and then back in. So let's do that. Actually, I'm going to make sure I leave this page first. I'm not sure if you have to. It just makes me feel better. And so now I'm logged back into Business Central. Let's go ahead and look at feature management again, just to confirm that that feature is enabled for all users, and it is. Be sure to check that out as new rollouts occur. If right from this page, you can easily click Learn More. It takes you to the Microsoft Docs site about what that feature and functionality is all about. Pretty cool. I hope you like that little tip there, life hack number 1. Let's move on to life hack number 2. Speaking of those new features that we enabled, background error checking for general journal entries. This one is pretty cool. So I'm going to go back into my finance section and go to my general journals. Notice here on my general journals page, I now have this option called background error check to select. It's optionally turned on. By default, it's turned off. So what we need to do is edit this list. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on for my monthly journal entry. And then we'll talk about what this does. So it's turned on. Let's go into the monthly journal entry batch. And if we turn on our fast tabs, don't forget, if you have questions about this, hit me up in the chat. If we turn on the fast tabs here by hitting the I over here, if yours isn't on already, notice this new fast tab journal check. So as we're typing in our journal entries, you'll see that it's automatically, every time we make a change, it's checking in the background and looks, hey, we've got one thing that's got an issue. So let's take a look here. Still just one, we're out of balance. So if we click on that, oh, amount must not be empty. So it tells us as we go through the journal entry and in the background checking it to tell us that there is something going on. Now we have two. It says, hey, one is out of balance and I need a GL account, knucklehead. That's checking for errors in the background while you're doing general journals. You can turn it on and off, like I said, but what's really cool about this is that you can click the error messages and immediately see them. Yeah, pretty cool. Hope you like that. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you like that. Number 3, drag and drop doc attach. Now let me start out by saying this. First of all, if you're not aware, there's a marketplace or an app store called AppSource for Business Central and all things in Dynamics. And you can access that directly from in Business Central. It's extension, actually, let's go to extension management. In extension management, kind of talking about this a bit more globally, here's a list of all of your extensions. But if I wanted to shop around, or I know that there's one I want to add in my system. Now, I guess it would be pretty fair to say that I would recommend you check with your partner, your trusted Microsoft partner, to at least let them know that you're considering or that you're going to install this. They might be aware of gotchas, those kind of things, or at least just to keep them in loop and keep that partnership in place. So extension marketplace, let's come in here. And in here is where I can shop for all of the extensions out there. Now there are some that are free, like legit free, and there are some that are free trial, and there are some that you're just going to have to buy. For Business Central, this is let's see. Let me just search for this. Is by InsightWorks, and it's called Doc Extender right here. And what this free add-in extension does is it allows you on records, instead of having to pick the file to attach. So now that's installing. Instead of asking, let me go into vendors. Let me get myself organized here. If I wanted to attach something to the vendor, let's say I want to attach a W-9 to the vendor. If you didn't know you could do that, that's over here on the attachments. Now, the behavior that you're looking at now is with Doc Extender, a free InsightWorks add-in. It does not cost anything. It's very secure, very safe. It's a great product. To me, it's a must-have because now I can just simply drag and drop from an email into there, and it uploads it to that record. So it says, hey, oh, I didn't configure it yet because I just installed it. Oh, by the way, I'm glad it did that because I wanted to let you know that these are going to be stored on your SQL database in your Business Central tenant, or optionally you can point this to SharePoint. So as you drag and drop, it's also it's putting them on your SharePoint site, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so now we got that. Let's go ahead. We've attached it. Here it is. We can preview it. Naturally, that's going to open up that W9. I can delete it if I need to, just by clicking on the 3 dots here and delete it. I can have different versions of this. So imagine a scenario in this case where the vendor's address changes and they send you a new W9. So you can kind of archive one and keep the others there. And that can be on transactions or GL accounts if you want to attach the Excel file that you use to create your reclass entry. Pretty cool. I think that's a must-have. I would install it in my tenant without blinking an eye. There may be others out there who do the same thing. I just tend to use the one by InsightWorks because I've worked with them so much and I trust them and their products. If you know of another one that does this or something different, let me know in the chat and we could chat about it after this session's over. All right, LifeHacks number 4, workflow. Now, I'm not going to be able to go into the details of a workflow specifically here during our time today at DynamicsCon, but what I can do is talk about this from a management level. Workflow is built in Business Central. And I hear a lot of people say that it's too complicated or that it's not robust enough. And you can also use workflow with Power Automate. The flow is built, can be attached to Business Central through Power Automate. I guess, I'm wondering if anybody's using workflow. Let me know in the chat. And if you are, what kind? So for me, an easy no-brainer is the example we just talked about with the vendor and the W-9. So very, very easy internal control. Create a workflow for vendor creation so that Shawn can't go into your system and create a vendor that shouldn't be created, if you know what I'm saying. And create a workflow around that and have that W-9 even be presented to the approver. There's plenty of options in the system for workflow. You have to have a workflow approver. They have to be set up as well, but there's templates, so you don't have to start from scratch. In fact, you can see on my screen here, I've got some for finance, for general journals. I've got document workflow through the integrations. There we go, vendor approval workflow, real easy. And purchase docs, sales docs, you name it. That's a lot of templates in the system. Be sure to check it out. Now you can build your own, you can customize it, you can add filters. So if you want, vendors that are in this state to go to this person for approval or something like that, you can do that. So be sure to check out workflow. At very least, implement it for your vendors as a little bit of internal controls. In a whole nother world, Power Automate, you can also create flows, which is a workflow engine. And I implore you to look in DynamicsCon here. I'm certain someone is talking about that. Maybe Mary is talking about that today. So check that out. Life hack number 5, dimension correction. This just came out in the spring. This is one of those changes that I think everybody should just be made aware of. You may not use it. It's not for everyone, admittedly. I think that there are reasons why maybe some folks wouldn't use it, but it is a very good change to allow someone the ability to modify the dimension that a GL level transaction was posted to. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that over here in Business Central. I'm going to go to the chart. Let's see. I'm going to go to my checking account, which is looking like it's doing excellent. These are my transactions in my chart. And so what I can do is, let's say this particular transaction is not posted to the right dimension, which I don't have on here. Okay. So what I want to do is go under entry and correct dimensions. So correct dimension is going to open up. This change is attached to that transaction. I can give it a description. Hey, I talked to Sherry. She said it's okay, it's a mistake, whatever you need. In my case, I don't have a dimension currently set up. So it's not just for those transactions that originated with a dimension. It could be, oops, I forgot. Have you ever done that? I feel like somebody has. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick my new dimension. Now what happens here is this change gets loaded into a job in the job queue and runs. And when it runs, so I can run it now. So mine is, the earliest start time is 10 p.m. So I want to choose to just run it immediately. That's another little tip there. Some folks think that it has to sit in that job queue and then they'll go to the job queue and manually run the job. When I say someone, I don't know who has done that before, but that little box up there, that little ticker box, run immediately. So let's run it. Successfully run. Let's go back into our entry and history of dimensions, and you can then see that, hey, I have an audit trail where I made a change from no value to this value. I think that's pretty cool. That's brand new as of spring this year. I think it was spring this year, and you can immediately start using that. I think that's pretty cool. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you love it? Wouldn't use it? Think it's a bad idea? I've heard some people say they think it's a bad idea, but until you can have that's sort of like reclassing a journal entry. At least to me. I digress. Let's check out life hack number 6. Company Hub. Most companies that I work with nowadays tend to have multiple entities within their umbrella, whether that's a shelter of some sort, real estate entity, or something like that. And Business Central, as you probably know, handles those entities quite well. What I love about this company hub, though, is if you have multiple companies that you're using, it's sort of like a great starting point. And while I talk about this, I want to remind everybody that you're not limited to one tab in Business Central. So it's a web browser, right? But you're not limited to one tab. You can have company A on this monitor and company B on this monitor, and be super productive, take a long lunch. Right from the company hub, I can see all of my companies here. I can see their cash account balances, overdue purchase invoices, etc. And I can refresh this too. So what else I really like about this is it's a very convenient way just to get to that company. So I clicked on Cronus USA. It's going to open a new tab, just the end user experience that I want, leaving my other company open in the other tab. And there I am, right in that company. So that's Company Hub. It's a different brand, a different version of that maybe about a year or so ago. I'm not sure. When was it? If you know when that came out, hit me up in the chat. Let me know. I think it was last year, but not many people are using it. I think it's a great starting point. Life hack number 7. Let's check this one out. What do we got? Oh, very important. So recently I was working with a customer who had made some inventory changes in their production environment. And when those changes were made, it was quickly realized that it was an error, but it affected many transactions. Very, very difficult to sort of undo with a journal entry. A lot of inventory adjustments needed to be made as a result. However, I want to make you aware, or make sure that you're aware, of the restore option that is just part of your environment, your install of Business Central. You get up to 30 days, and I'll talk about the up to in a minute, of point in time restore availability. You can restore it to another environment in on your tenant, because you got tenant, environment, company, right? That's sort of like the hierarchy. You can install it, restore it to a Sandbox without calling your partner. If you have access to the admin center, that's an option in there. And if you don't, probably somebody in your IT department should. And if you don't, maybe you're a smaller company, you need to reach out to the partner. I'm sure they could do this quite easily. The up to 30-day part is the one that I really want you to be aware of. Because around the time when the bigger waves happen in the spring and the fall, when the major and minor version change, with the combination of the two change, the restore is only available back to the point at which that change was made. So if your system just updated yesterday, you can only restore back to yesterday. It's a little bit of a tricky situation during those times. I have it on my calendar just to do a restore. We schedule our updates, and I do a restore to a separate environment to keep that copy of it available. And that might be a little side trick there too as well. And like I said, you can restore to production or a Sandbox. That's in the admin panel. If you don't know what the admin panel is, maybe you don't have access to it. Sometimes there's a good reason, right? So find out who does, and then you know who your restore point of contact is. That's in the admin center. We'll go in there in just a minute. Life hack number 8. Copying and pasting into general journal entries. So maybe everyone's aware of this, maybe. And I say that because I was recently working with a customer who kind of was a little frustrated at how long it was taking to key in this particular journal entry. And she was rekeying it in from Excel. And I just happened to be part of that conversation and back the conversation up a little bit and showed them the copy into copy and paste into journal entries. And naturally, that is part of an implementation training, those little fine nuggets of functionality. This was a newer person, and no one really showed them how to do it. So I thought I would make sure that everybody's aware of it here. Real easy to do. You can make this part of your journal entry file. I'm an accountant myself, and I know it's a hard habit to break. I keep copy an Excel file, save it as August 2021, save it as September 2021. You can keep this as like just a tab in your Excel file that properly lines up with the layout of your general journal window in Business Central. So if I go into my monthly here, let's see. So what I mean by that is if I have extra columns in here, I need to make sure I have the extra columns over here in my Excel file as well. So I'm just going to copy these. I'm going to drop this out. Maybe I'll make this 100 or something, make it obvious. And I'm just going to copy these four. I'm going to go over to Business Central. I'm going to select all these. And I'm going to use my shift and down arrow to do so. I'm a keyboard person, so then I'm going to do Control V and to paste. And so now it's going to paste those four records over top of this in here, which is pretty handy. I mean, it's quite handy actually. And now certainly there are the other options of editing in Excel. And you could certainly do that under Edit in Excel here. Let me pin this. So I can take this and move this into Excel, modify the data directly in Excel, and then publish it back into Business Central. But a lot of times accountants are doing a lot of analysis in Excel, reconciliation, etc. So the end result is in Excel anyway. So you're gonna have to copy it from your file into the Edit in Excel and then publish it. So to me, it's almost like, why not copy it from Excel and just paste it in Business Central? Do you use that? Do you like it? Let me know in the comments. I use it. It's a little quirky, I have to admit, but the keyboard helps make things a lot easier. Let's talk about life hack number 9. Ooh, that's a little trippy. Filters, wildcards and filters. Another end user experience brought to you through the magic of DynamicsCon and shared as a life hacks here. It's not that folks aren't learning this on an implementation, but if you're not using it often, or perhaps you're new, you don't know, the filters and the wildcards are pretty cool. So I'm going to go into just a list, and I'm going to turn my filter on right here. So here's my list of transactions that make up my 10100 account, and it's filtered by that right there. So maybe what I want to do is I want to get everything from, maybe I'll use, let's see, I use document date, or posting date, excuse me. And I want to get everything from April 1st, 2019 through April 30th, 2019. Now that's going to be arranged. That dot dot is from this to that. And that works just as well in non-date fields. So let's do description. We can use the contains. Let me jump over to my cheat sheet here. Let's do pipe. We'll do that for another one. So the asterisk, let's do that. So if I want to say it starts with anything, which is the asterisk, but somewhere in there is the word up and ends with anything. There we go. If I want to make sure it starts with first, but ends with anything else, there we go. And the same, I'm just going to clear that so we can get another example. We'll do wide. It starts with wide and ends with anything else. I can get them pretty easily. Now think of a scenario. A lot of times these are amounts, right? So we're looking for a dollar amount. And so because of a dollar amount, we can say, give me, make sure I'm in the right filter. Let's go to a amount. And I'm going to say greater than or less than $100. So now I've got everything less than $100. If I'm looking for maybe exactly minus 995, I could just type that in the filter. But for wildcards, we can say from minus 1,000 to 0. Pretty cool. That's a little bit about filters. There's also pipe. So let me show you pipe. And pipe we can use on pretty much anything. I'll say Fabricam, or use description. So Fabricam, got to make sure it's typed perfectly. Pipe, or which is an or node publishers. And if you type it properly, whew, I did. I'm surprised actually. You can use the pipe as an or, and you're not limited to one. I could put another one in there. So a nice tip there is if you've got a few, like 15 things or something like that, use some formula magic in Excel to build out that value that you copy and paste in there. And naturally, greater than, less than, I think I showed you, but this 2 single quotes, if you want to get an empty, return the empty. I think that's important. So in this document type, this is a little bit of a trick too. You can check, oh, that's not a good example. Let me do department. Let's do department code. Department code, there it is. That's a drop-in as well. But we can do single quote, tab. And that's going to return what when there is no value in there. Notice I said single quote, not double quote. I don't believe the double quote works. Nope, the double quote does not work. So it's single quote, returns where there is no value in that field for that search in that wildcard. Okay, let's move on. Life hacks number 10. All right, last one here. Let's see. Duplicate vendors or customers. Very, very good. So this particular one, imagine a scenario, we've got 2, 3, 5 vendors who are all really the same, but you just kind of tolerate it because, well, there's not really much you can do about it and you don't want to delete them or have somebody purge them. But there is a combiner available. And the way this works is you want to, if you have multiple vendors you want to combine, what you want to do is start on the vendor that you want to be the destination, where you want them all brought to, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go to vendors, and I don't have 2 real duplicates, but I'm going to open up, I'm going to combine Shawn's Cool Company and bring everything from First Up Consultants. So I'm going to go into this vendor, and I'm going to say actions, functions, merge. Right at your fingertips, I know. Actions, functions, merge. Sounds like an Adam Sandler skit. Anyway, merge with. We're going to open up the merge window, and we're going to pick which one we want to merge this with. And I'm going to say First Up Consultants. And what that's going to do is going to evaluate all the records, all the history, everything in the system, and let you choose if you want to exclude certain things. I'm just going to let mine do that work and basically merge those together so that all of the history and information with the one vendor is now part of the other vendor. So a little bit of time saving there. Let's take a look see if we have an example, and that may take a little while, which is why I have these screenshots in here for you. Now, we still have a little bit of time. Let me check. We still have a little bit of time, which is awesome. So I have a bonus life hack. Actually, if you're good little boys and girls, there are 2 bonus life hacks. So let's talk about the first one here, which is changed posted description. Again, this I think is a handy little thing that not everybody is aware of. By the way, this is loaded now. I can go ahead and run it. I'm going to abandon that right now. We're going to go into our posted transactions at the general ledger level. So let me go back into my chart of accounts. I'm going to go into an account. And right here on this window, let me tuck this away. Right here on this window is our description. And if I try to click in this right now, I can't change that. These are posted transactions. You might feel like, well, that makes sense. I can't change them, right? So let's see how we do this. If we click on edit list, now it opens up and we can change certain things. See, I can't change the amount, but I can change the description. So I'm just going to say new description. I thought I was. Did I not type it? There we go. I didn't type it. Told you I was terrible at the keyboard. New description. Boom. Now I have that saved and I could change the posted description. Nice little tip. I think that's super cool. And be sure to try that out. Do you use that? Do you think that's like an audit? No, maybe. Maybe. So make sure you use security controls to protect who can and who can't make that change. And our last bonus life hack here today is something that I think you should make sure when you get back to your office that you check out. Make sure you check with your team or your partner and make sure that someone is added in the admin center as a notification recipient. This is really important. It's pretty helpful through the upgrade process, I will tell you. And what this is, and this is the admin panel right here, this is notification recipients. You just add one or multiple people to this, and they're going to get an email from Microsoft when certain things occur. And so let's talk about what some of those examples are. first one here is when a rollout is coming your way. If you want to know that a rollout is coming, instead of waiting for somebody to find it on Twitter, or you hear from your partner, you can find out directly from Microsoft when it's available, and then take that next step and go schedule your upgrade for the right date. So you get, whoever's on that distribution list and that notifications list gets these emails, these notification emails, every one that I'm talking about here. And there's a few good examples. So this is an easy one. And then another one is when your system is updated. So you get alerted, hey, your system has been updated. Not so bad. And also, when here's a nice little link to get a release notes, an idea of what the release notes were. How about the ever important if your system failed to update? Now, you might know that if you log into the admin panel and purposely look, but this notification gets sent out if it fails. Microsoft does a really good job of listing the errors in that email. Hopefully you're working and being proactive to get the release notes and try the upgrade on a production Sandbox environment, because you can do that. You can do that earlier in the Sandbox than you do in production. Then you can reschedule it if you make the fixes, or if Microsoft has trouble, they'll let you know that they're pausing it. So if you think you've scheduled it for Friday, but they pause them on Thursday and don't restart them, they're going to let you know. And you can see more information about it. Or when they reinstate that rollout, they'll notify you, just like in this email here. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your attention during LifeHacks 10 Things Every End User Should Know About Business Central. My name is Shawn Dorward. I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll look forward to seeing you over in the chat. Thanks again for supporting DynamicsCon and the user group community. Well, hey there, John. How are you?
Hey, Shawn. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Well, how about it? DynamicsCon fall, well, let's just call it October, September 2021. Day number 2. What do y'all think of that? What do you think of that life hack session there? The 10, not the only 10, John. It's very important to remember. There's many more things, but what do you think of those tips?
Was it a life hack to say don't settle for 10, at least 12?
Yeah, very, very true. I hope everyone's having a great morning. I know there were some questions, a lot of traction in the chat. There was some help from others as well. So, did you have any questions that you're able to capture from the discussions there?
Yeah, I was trying to keep up at the end, and maybe if we go a little bit in reverse, but there were a number of questions kind of on the wildcard piece. Seemed to be a pretty popular topic, and some of the other filtering that was there. So I was trying to see if, I know some people are helping answering, so that's awesome. Great community involvement. One was around if there's any special characters. Can you enclose that in quotes? Do you know the answer to that one, Shawn, or kind of how to deal with if there's some of those special characters in there?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I think just you have to be careful because some of the special characters are wildcards themselves. So I'd look to either test it myself to be sure, but if there's anybody in the chat who has some feedback on there, I'd love to hear that. I actually didn't know about the @ symbol being a flag to mark the case insensitive. So my mission to learn something new every day is already finished here at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. So thanks for that. Yeah, so not really sure. I'd have to test it myself, but looking to hear from others as well.
All right. Awesome. So I'm going to look down the list here. I think earlier, so thanks to Mary as well. So you kind of both kind of had a premonition there that she'd be answering some questions, I think, but Mary was helping answer some. So just one, maybe if you wanted to spend a minute or two, she kind of said she'd love to hear some of the pros and cons of the dimension correction. And you mentioned you fell in the middle. Do you want to maybe mention one of each of those or some thoughts around that?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, thanks to Mary for participating in the chat and helping others as well. Check out Mary's session. I think it's today. She's going to be talking about Power Automate and workflows from that perspective. Um, so the dimension correction, there probably is a little bit of a debate over it because as an accountant or someone who is, kind of in that mindset, there is a link that exists between things on the general ledger and the subsidiaries. And we like to have those things in a perfect world always reconcile. No different than the kind of forgiveness we give ourselves when we post journal entry reclasses. That's how I think of this dimension correction. It's one of those things that I wouldn't rely on as my go-to method. If you have to reclass it, using dimension correction, I think you have to stop, collaborate, and listen. No, or in the name of love, not sure. But you have to stop and really say, do I need to change a business process upstream so that I don't have to consistently make these corrections? And you want to make sure, at least in my mind, you want to make sure that those are the exception. Dimension corrections, just like reclasses, are the exception, not the rule. So if you can automate it in a subsidiary, that's probably the best way to go.
Yeah, I guess I'm just chiming in a little bit. To my mind, some of the dimensions to me are, kind of the direct extension of the GL and in the accounts that are in there, and some are more tracking. So I'm more comfortable seeing corrections made on some and not on others, depending on how they're used. So it sounds like similar thought process there, but definitely kind of the way I start to think about that there.
John, that's a great point, and I don't want to get hung up on this topic too much, but you opened this can. So another element of it, like anything else, is it really depends on how you're reporting on this data and how you're relying on it. So if you're making a dimension correction, you're expecting your subsidiary Power BI report to get updated. That's not going to happen. So you just have to make sure that you're making the correction in the right place and that the expected outcome for your reporting is what you're really trying to do.
All right, sounds good. I'm trying to keep up with the chat as it looks like it's still scrolling here too. So looks like there was one towards the end about the dimension correction, or sorry, I'm on the last topic yet, around the journal check. And I know there was one earlier seeing some inconsistencies about it. So anything you've seen at all? I know it's probably environment specific there, but any comments on kind of maybe implementing or getting that consistency with that check, or anything you've seen around that?
On the journal entry check tool, so it's new, so I really haven't seen inconsistencies myself. I'd be interested in taking a little bit of a deep dive into that. So I really haven't. It to me seems quite useful, quite helpful. So feel free, whoever posted that question, to reach out to me. Either direct message me on Twitter or my email's on the slide deck. Also, just Mary mentioned in the comment here, what about a company starting with no dimension, talking about the dimension correction? That's a great example. I mean, if you go 6 months and you realize you weren't tagging things against a particular, maybe you decide you want to have a dimension code for vehicles or something, so certainly retroactively repairing those or correcting those transactions, a perfect example. Often when we do implementations, from the partner perspective, customers aren't quite settled or resolved on what dimensions are and what value they bring until they get a little bit of experience under the belt. So yes, that is a great example of how and why you might be able to use that.
All right, awesome. So one of the other questions I see, recent one posted in there. There was a question about restoring, also available from Sandbox to production. So Sandbox to production, I'm not sure if maybe vice versa as well. I know there's some other options there, but do you want to kind of answer?
If the question is, can you restore from Sandbox to production using the admin panel? Not that I'm aware of. It may be an option there and I just missed it, but I don't know that that's an option. I know in the past I've had to work with Microsoft directly for that, and that was also not in production like production 1, it was into production 2, so there might be more to that, but I'm not really sure Looks like we're hearing in the chat it'll be available in the next release in BC19, so the one just coming out real soon. Interesting.
All right. Okay, well, scrolling through here a little bit. So you mentioned, as we were talking about the dimension correction, you mentioned reporting tools. So do you want to comment a question around favorite reporting tools to use? Kind of an open question there, but you can run with that how you want.
Yeah, certainly. So, I come from the Dynamics GP space, and Management Reporter, or FRX, was something that we used often and still use often for that platform. So I tend to appreciate account schedules for financial reporting in Business Central. There are some things that I really wish it had. By the way, be sure to check out the Ideas site. You can go to my website, lifehacks365.com. I have a page there with all of the Ideas links, and vote up those Business Central ideas for something specifically, like maybe making a dynamic header in account schedules. It's kind of painful that you can't dynamically change the header. So as the quarters change, you have to go in and manually change it. So I use account schedules for certainly some, and naturally tend to just think Power BI beyond that. And there are some good ISVs for reporting in Space 4 now, for example, and others. But Power BI definitely is a place that I tend to frequent.
All right, so a couple of housekeeping things here, because I see some questions in there. Somebody was having problems seeing your email address, so I'm seeing it on my screen, but I might have a little different view. So do you want to give that out as well here?
Yeah, I think somebody just put it in the chat. What you see on the screen there, that's my Twitter handle. I realize now that might be confusing and look like an email address, but it's somebody put that in the chat for my work email address. Feel free to reach out to me, or you can reach out to my personal email address, which I'll put in there as well, or stalk me on Twitter. However you want to reach me.
All right, and then there were some questions in there about the videos. I didn't mention that, but just to reiterate, I think it's about a week or so from now we'll start to see the videos posted on the YouTube channel.
That's right. I think tomorrow you might be able to watch today's video on the Brella tab. I may be wrong there, but it's worth looking into. I think that's how it was last in the spring, or in the first wave of the year. Okay.
All right. I did notice kind of on a different topic, there was somebody asking about migrating from QuickBooks and allowing an extension in the phone number field. Looks like we just had an answer in the chat as well, though, that you can just fill that in as an extension from there. So any other advice on that one, Shawn?
No, you may just have to scrub your data a little bit if the data comes over with any non-numeric values. I think that field is purely numeric. So other than that, it should recognize the extension.
All right, and I did see a comment in there similar to that about scrubbing data. There were a couple of comments, I think, around those special characters being in fields. I was kind of a best practice if we can not have those special characters in whatever field, name, address. Just reporting and different tools does make life a little bit easier, avoid some issues with that. So I missed who had that as my screen keeps scrolling here, but definitely good advice there as well.
Right, for sure.
All right, so you covered some newer things, some things that have been out for a little bit here. Do you have a favorite feature from the last release here or coming up that you'd want to highlight?
Sure. So one that I talk to customers a lot about, and I think it just kind of flies under the radar, it's been out for a while, a few years at least, is bulk loading of inventory items. Bulk loading of the item images. So if you have 100 inventory items and you want to attach one image to every one of those inventory items, that seems like a relatively painful task to do through the user interface. But there is the feature where if you name the image the same as your item ID, and then you zip them up into a zip file, you can upload them into Business Central, and it will automatically attach hundreds of images to those items. So that's an oldie but goodie. And the new version, it's either out now or it's coming out is the defaulting of the line type on sales order documents and purchase order documents. So what I'm referring to is when you create these purchase order, for example, and you create your header, and then you go into the details section, and you have an option to create that line item, whether it's a GL code, an inventory item, and other things. But if you're frequently wanting that, if you are predominantly wanting it to be GL account, for example, you can now set that to default. And I think that's just a small but powerful change that'll help increase accuracy and reduce some keyboard frustration from end users.
All right, awesome. Great information. Just doing a little time check. I think we've got about 2, maybe 3 minutes left before we get the boot here. We could probably talk for an hour or more, but we got to give some other people some time. So was there any other kind of a favorite tip from a recent release, or anything you want to call out here as we just have a couple minutes left?
Nothing to mind. I mean, those were sort of my two top of mind. I was going to get them into this presentation. If you've ever spoken at an event, John, I know you have, and you have a session coming up here on the GP track. You tend to rehearse. You put all this good work. You want to help people, get value out of your session, and you think you have your timing down, and it's inevitable that you either run way over or you don't get all your content in, or in my case, it happened to end sooner. So thanks to everyone for all the questions and for the dialogue back and forth. My email's up there. You can visit my website, lifehacks365.com, where I talk about things Business Central, GP, Power BI, Excel, all kinds of other cool stuff. I will be speaking at DynamicsCon Live. So this virtual event, the parent company of this virtual event is hosting their first in-person limited tickets available. It's November, I should know this. It's November 10th and 11th in Anaheim, California. I'll be speaking at that event in person. I'll also be joining John, my colleague John, right here in Houston next month for Summit North America. So everyone, thanks so much for joining us. John, thank you for helping me manage the chat and all the questions. Have a great rest of your morning and the rest of the time here at DynamicsCon.